Hi, my name is Chris, and welcome to the first ever video of the Fragrant Divide. We are well into the summer here in the US, and as someone who lives in the desert, there's nothing more apropos for a first video than to share a list of incredible fragrances to wear in this hot, sweltering season. So let's start things off with Chanel Allure Homme Sport Cologne. This actually smells very simple. It's just a blend of citruses, clean musks, and it has a subtle hint of aromatic peppery woods at the bottom. What I really like about this one is that it's very elegant. The mix of the citruses and the musks, it's so elegantly done. Like the citruses is not sharp, it's not overly sweet. They're just right. And even like deep into the dry down, it still remains very citrusy and musky. And it has a pretty decent performance. But don't be fooled. It's actually an eau de toilette concentration, not a cologne concentration. So if I had to guess, it's on the lower end of the eau de toilette range. The downside of this is that Chanel has become very, very expensive, and the thing is, from what I remember buying this one, like there was no 50 ml bottle of this. It goes straight to 100 ml and 150 ml. But if you look into the website right now, there's a 50 ml, and the price of the 50 ml is what I paid for originally for this 100 ml bottle. So it's gotten very, very expensive, and that's pretty ridiculous. Next, we have Olmsted and Vaux by the company Fleur. Oh, you've probably heard of Fleur. They've been all over social media this past couple of months, and that's because they've been bought out by a new owner, and they decided to go in a different direction. I'm really hoping that that direction is not downhill. So, I thought it's a good time to kind of like highlight one of their what they now call classics, which is Olmsted and Vaux. And I think this is one of their more popular ones when they first came out. Olmsted and Vaux opens very citrusy, it's slightly green, and it has this almost cold stone feeling to it. It's probably from the combination of maybe shiso leaf, mate tea, and maybe vetiver. And that overall opening in mid sort of gives off a powdery vibe, but not explicitly so. It's more like a texture thing, maybe with the musks, with that kind of combination. And then as it dries down, it gets smoother and smoother. And overall, it feels very refreshing without being, just plain flat aromatic. Like a lot of aromatics kind of become very flat and boring as it dries down. But this one, I think it somehow remains interesting. And this is unisex for sure, slightly leaning masculine. So refreshing is really the recurring theme in this list, and the next one is no different. So the next one I have Eau de Rhubarbe Écarlate by Hermes. Yeah, to be honest, I could have just as easily filled this list with Hermes fragrances, but that sounds like a video on its own. So maybe in the future. But here we have Eau de Rhubarbe Écarlate, which stands for Scarlet Rhubarb. And this one opens with delicious watery fruitiness. The rhubarb here is just tart enough and it's sweet enough. And there's also a good amount of white musk that gives it a clean feeling without being particularly soapy. The rhubarb, the red currant, and the musk, they all work so well together in here, and it's a very like beautiful finish, and it smells very natural. This is inoffensive, maybe leaning slightly feminine, but who cares really? And again, it's a very delicious scent without being explicitly gourmand. Also, the fruit in here, like the bottle actually looks very appropriate because it the fruit almost feels slightly gelatinous because it's very fruity without being like a fruit concentrate that has that overly sweet thing going on. Here it's all properly tempered, and I love it for that. It's perfect for summer. Next, we have L'eau de Neroli by Diptyque, and this one is another citrusy one. It opens citrusy. It's a bit green. This has that familiar neroli orange blossom combination, but what I really love about this one is the addition of beeswax. The beeswax in here it starts off kind of wet and oily, and then as it goes on, as it dries down, it starts becoming dry, slightly drier, and giving off this almost sandy texture to it. So if you're looking for something to kind of satisfy your sweet tooth, in high heat, this is definitely a good option instead of fragrances that usually dry down with tonka or fake vanilla, which can be annoying and overly sweet. And in the summer, you don't really want that, right? As you can see here, this is the older bottle of L'eau de Neroli. They've standardized the bottles recently, and they all come in the oval, standard Diptyque bottles now, which is nice. And as far as I know, it hasn't been reformulated. The next designer joining the list is Otever from Bulgari. Now this one is focused on green tea, and it opens as an aromatic spicy with that very noticeable cardamom note. There are very little hints of citruses, but this feels very green right off the bat. And it stays quite green well into the dry down. It does have that steamy characteristic to it, from when you make hot tea. But the green tea in here is a little fresher. I think it's more of an accord, but it's not earthy per se, and it's not like a roasted green tea. This is a very cooling and calming type of scent, and much more relaxed than the other fragrances on this list. It's very subtle. It does have decent longevity in my opinion, but it's very, very subtle. It's hardly noticeable, but when you do notice it, it's very nice to smell it in the air. And I just have to say that this is probably one of the classiest bottles I've ever seen. If you're enjoying the video so far, hit that like button. If you're interested in more fragrance videos, hit the subscribe button down below. Another predominantly green scent is Enchanted Forest by the Vagabond Prince, Fragrantica's very own. The name of this fragrance very much influences what I think of it because the execution of the scent matches it incredibly well. Enchanted Forest is all about black currant. Think of the leaf, the flower, and the fruit. It opens very bright with those aldehydes. It's cold, fruity, tart, and very green. Once those sparkling characteristics in the opening dissipates, it becomes woodier, but it's still very much green, and it starts becoming linear from that point. It's quite subtle, really, but I mean, after the first hour. But if you want a little bit of an escape from your day, just put on a little bit of this, and then it really transports you to an enchanted forest where it's a bit cold, it's probably a little foggy. You need to try this one. Keeping up with the green theme, we have Un Jardin sur le Toit by Hermes. Inspired by an actual garden on the rooftop, this opens quite fruity with a juicy apple and pear. But my favorite part of this is, of course, the green part. The greenness of this is a bit grassy, as the notes suggest. It's textured, very green, a little herbal, and a little sweet. In my personal experience, I think this is the best sillage and longevity in the Anjardin line. If I exclude Sur La Lagoon, which I don't have much experience with, but if you spray this on clothes, it will just last for hours. And the last green scent on this list is The Soft Lawn by Imaginary Authors. Now, this one is just beautiful. This centers around linden blossom with a solid green and herbal support. As with all Imaginary Authors fragrances, the imaginary note in this is a tennis ball. But from memory, I believe tennis balls usually smell more on the rubbery side. What the tennis ball note really lends to this scent is a slightly fibrous texture, which, to be realistic, it's probably coming from the oak moss. Again, I find this beautiful. It's very on brand with the old books theme, and there's a touch of vintage on this one too. Sadly, this has been discontinued, but it has been replaced by the Soft Lawn 2.0, which I haven't really tested that one, but based on the reviews, it seems like that's a brighter reincarnation. So I'm looking forward to testing that one. So the last designer on the list is, surprise, a blue fragrance. So Dior Homme Eau is a very unfortunately discontinued fragrance from Dior, and it's essentially a generic blue fragrance, but with a twist. It's a spicy woody amber with iris at its heart, but as if wearing makeup, that waxy, slightly rooty iris in here masks that unpleasant genericness of the whole scent. And the iris in here just gives it a new personality, something more interesting. And it made it classy, even. And because of that classiness, this became one of my favorite, scents to wear, perfect for those formal events that your friends like to schedule during, the hottest days of the year. Like, think of weddings, especially outdoor weddings, something where you might need to dress up a little preppier, something like that. But it's definitely good for those kinds of occasions. And finally, I have Escale en Indonesia by Les Indemodables. I actually just got this not too long ago, but I've had a sample of it for quite some time now. It's an eau de cologne that showcases the note of real ambergris, at least according to the brand, that was found in Indonesia. This brand is interesting because they either are partners with or are sisters with another brand that boasts a more efficient way of creating tinctures, that really allows the material to shine. In this case, it's ambergris. So Escal on Indonesia opens citrusy with hints of the rind in there, and there's a little bit of a salty undertone, and then there's this weird animalic funk that is something between like floral indolic and that musky inky side of vetiver. That part of the scent obviously is coming from ambergris, and not that I've smelled a real ambergris in person, but it seems like with all of the fragrances that I've smelled, it seems pretty consistent. So this to me smells like the like a rocky seaside, not necessarily like the sandy beach part, but that part where there's a lot of rocks and the salt water kind of like hits it in multiple directions, and some parts are drying in the sun, some parts are still wet, some parts are growing algae. It smells partly damp, kind of wet. It's a little musty, a little salty. So that's the kind of scent that I get from this. But it's very, very interesting. And as an eau de cologne, the performance of this one is pretty poor. So value for money might not be very good, but you know, I don't really care at this point. It's just too intoxicating for me, that ambergris smell. And it's one of those scents that I never thought I'd fall in love with, but I did anyway. Here are the 10 incredible fragrances that I'll be enjoying this summer. I hope you found something interesting in this video. Thank you for watching.